in our house, I try to be a role model for the kids. So we've got like a saying in the house just now that sweets are treats, not snacks. If the kids come to me and they ask for a snack, my default answer is, well, there's blueberries, there's apples. And I know by the look that they're looking for a chocolate bar. And I'm like, well, sweets are treats. So now they're in the habit, especially now when there's a lot of, selection box chocolates lying around, they're now in the habit of coming to say, can I have a treat? And those are limited to one a day. So they know to spend that wisely, because just because we've got a whole bag full of chocolates left over from Christmas doesn't mean to say you're going to binge on it and eat 3 chocolate bars a day, because, in the middle of the summer, are you eating 3 chocolate bars in a day? No. So they're also learning that there's not restriction, but, sensible choices that you can make in terms of the foods that you're eating. And they will come and they'll ask for a snack and they'll have a banana, or they'll have a piece of fruit or melon or whatever.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the podcast. Very excited today. Very special episode, chatting with somebody who is going to have an amazing 2026. I can already tell from some of the conversations we've had, and we've been working together for several months in the mentorship program. I've actually sent some of my one-to-one clients to her because this individual is such a great coach, serving her community so well. But in today's podcast, we're going to talk about her story, what got her into fitness, how her mess became her message, and potentially using some of those tips, tools, and tricks to enhance your own life. Lisa Maddock, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Lisa, I want to unpack your journey first and foremost, because I obviously know a lot about you personally, professionally, all the people that you're serving online, the growth of the podcast, etc., etc. Insert all these goals we have for 2026 and beyond here. But what's really interesting is you're a living embodiment of your mess becoming your message. So what I want to start on is your personal journey. What got you into shape first, because I'm going to share your before and afters. I'm going to have all those links in the description. People will be able to see it on social media. So they can take inspiration from a very similar starting point. Can you take us back to... Let's go to the before picture. You've got several of them on social media, but you can pick any of them because they all kind of represent where you were. Talk to us about that stage of life, that season of life, being a busy mum, not being able to fully prioritize nutrition, fitness, and then making that decision to make a physical change, which is now serving into your work and helping others do something similar. But let's talk about your journey. Bring us back to that point and just paint the picture of where you were.
Yeah, absolutely. So the picture that you're talking about is my like literal transformation, and the before picture was taken in 2024 in January. And at that point in my life, I had been through numerous cycles of yo-yo diet, and I tried everything under the sun, couldn't get anything to stick. I'd done like Slimming World, I'd done a juice diet for 9 months before I got married. Everything that you could think of, I had tried in one way or another. Had been into fitness every now and again. I had done bits and pieces of running, CrossFit, and then had 2 children. So while I was on maternity leave, fitness was a lot easier to upkeep because you didn't have the added stressors of, going to work, taking up your time and things like that. But when real life kind of kicked back in and that busy routine of having 2 kids, a full-time job, a house to run, pets, etc., then everything kind of fell by the wayside again, and I just piled all the weight back on, was really, really unhappy. And in the lead up to that before picture, the few months before it, I was really, really unhappy, and I was saying to my husband, like, I really need to do something extreme. Like, I was at the point where I wanted to save up to get, surgery. I was like, this is how extreme this is. I am miserable. And he was like, okay, like, whatever makes you happy, but in the meantime, while you're saving up, why don't you give the gym like another chance? Because then at least you'll be a little bit fitter going into a surgery like that. And we were quite fortunate that just before lockdown, we had put a home gym into our garage. So we'd converted our garage, and we had just decked it out with all the equipment that you would need just before all the prices got hiked. So we were very fortunate that we got in there before all the prices surged. And I thought, right, I'm just going to kind of go in. I had a few dumbbells, basic equipment, a bench and stuff. And because I had been in and out the gym for numerous years, I knew basic moves. I wasn't an expert or anything like that, but I knew what to kind of do. Basically, I was watching like Joe Wicks videos and, YouTube tutorials and stuff, and thought, I'm just going to give this a bash. Kind of got a little bit into it, but felt a lot like I was lost. Like I just didn't have the accountability. I didn't have anybody like telling me this is what you need to do. This is how you fuel your nutrition. And again, I kind of felt it starting to slip again. So I had actually been following Kelly Fennell online on Instagram for a few months prior to that. And I was just like, this woman's just on my wavelength. I reached out to her, signed up to her coaching program, started working with her. And the benefits for me for having a coach and that accountability piece was just the turning point in my life. So that's what those transformation pictures like were, from starting to work with her, finishing working with her, realizing this, it wasn't just a body transformation, it was a whole lifestyle mindset transformation. And it spurred me into now doing fitness as a new career for myself. And then now I'm helping people kind of take on those transformations themselves. So it wasn't just the physical aspect, it's the whole lifestyle overhaul is what that picture represents.
Yeah, and your mess becoming your message, because the people you serve now, whether it's online or in the class capacity for people that are living locally, it's a very similar brain space, headspace to where you were at, where it wasn't, I'm an absolute beginner. I'm somebody that has made several attempts, yo-yo dieting, juice cleanses, gone to the gym, weight started to come back on. So it was a case of one step forward, two steps back, one step forward, two steps back, which is a very common pain point for people. And Kelly, who's been on this podcast twice, I've been on hers too. I love Kelly. Kelly was one of my first graduates through the How to Move Your Personal Training Business online course. She's a testimony on the website, a wonderful, wonderful human being. And I want to unpack a little bit of that, because obviously having Kelly as the potential catalyst in terms of her method, her message, she's very holistic in terms of how she approaches things, and you do something very similar in terms of taking what works that she's done that you can apply, what's worked in my business that you can apply. But I'm curious, from a nutrition training or mindset perspective, what was, and there might be multiple answers to this, but what was the missing link? What was the thing that when you were coaching with Kelly, because accountability is huge, it's why the fitness space, personal training space, business space is such a big market for people, because people are busy, they've got kids, they've got work, they can't be spending all their time researching nutrition, researching training, researching business. It's cutting straight to the source, going into the signal versus the noise, and having a coach hold your hand figuratively in terms of accountability, but also giving you the direction. What were one or two of the missing pieces that connected with Kelly that set up this long-term sustainable change?
Yeah, I think it was probably the belief that you didn't need to be on a diet. Like
Hmm.
it wasn't a diet. And this is something that resonates with me just now. And I hear it from clients all the time, and I get the feedback from people all the time, well, when are you going to stop dieting? And it was that shift in that mindset. So this isn't a diet. This is my diet, as in like this is my life, this is my nutrition, this is what I'm eating. I'm not on a diet, because if you're on a diet, it would imply that you're going to come off it at some point. And for me, when I got into that mindset of, no, this is just what I eat and how I am, it then just became a lifestyle, and it was so much easier to maintain because there wasn't that, oh, it's going to end at some point mentality. You scroll through Instagram and things like that now, and you're filled with numerous pictures of healthy eating, and it's always the angle that this is nice and healthy, this is nutritious. But actually that's just a normal balanced diet. It's just been sold and packaged in a way that this is a diet, this is healthy, this is how we should aspire to be, when actually that's just our natural way, and we've just been, conditioned into thinking that sugar and processed foods is the normal, whereas it should be flipped.
Completely agree. You have a lot of tools that you use in your arsenal. Something that comes up on your social channels, and I know it's the same with clients, is like batch cooking meals and having go-to healthy nutritional meals. So if there's somebody that's listening to this podcast who has done that flip in real time right now, or has already made it themselves, contextually outside of this podcast, where they're like, okay, I need to eat, quote unquote, eat healthier. I know processed food, sugar shouldn't be my staple. There's a time and a place for it, but 80-20 tends to work well for most people. 80% nutritious whole food, 20% your favorite food. So like, I eat protein bars, I love chocolate, but again, it's not 80% of my nutrition. Otherwise, again, it wouldn't work for me at all, because I don't have a sweet tooth, I have sweet teeth. So it would be an absolute disaster if I gave into that all the time. But on top of batching, what are some of the tools you use personally now that the old Lisa didn't?
Yeah, I think I've got a bit more self-control now, where I used to let the cravings or, that sugar rush kind of take over, and I wouldn't know where to stop. And one thing that I constantly repeat to myself and repeat to my family and my friends is your body's not a bin. So I don't need to finish every single thing that's on my plate just because like I've paid for the meal. And previously, I would do that. Like, if you're in a restaurant, I would eat every single morsel of food, like, on the plate because I had paid for that, and I would eat it, and I would feel sick, and you'd feel bloated and horrible after it, and you would end up ruining your night because you were so stuffed. Whereas now, I can go out. I don't even order as much now, so there's a shift. So I'm not ordering as much food as what I used to, but I'm enjoying knowing that it's not off a diet, it's just part of my nutrition. The rest of the week I've ate relatively balanced and on plan because then I can enjoy that meal, whatever it is, whether it's a McDonald's or, a cooked breakfast or a nice meal out for a special occasion, that you can then enjoy that, and that's like a good flip to have because you don't then feel guilty about having this, and that honestly that freedom that you get from I don't need to finish all this on my plate just because it's there. Like I'm done, I'm full now. And not feeling crap and bloated after it, then you're just enjoying it. So you're actually getting your money's worth because you've enjoyed it.
How long did it take to get to that point? Because again, I know this firsthand experience, but also firsthand experience professionally working with people. And this is the model and the individuals that you work with specifically that try and break that eating till they're full. And again, I'm sure there's childhood conditioning in there, clear your plate, etc. Particularly in Ireland, Scotland, England, Wales, like that's a big cultural part for clear your plate and good boy, good girl, you've finished your dinner. How long did that take to flip to your new normal, where now you don't need to finish the plate or you're just ordering a smaller portion size? Because again, I know this can be days for some in terms of just a click, others it takes months and years. What did it look like for you?
It's a good question because I think the practice of it was relatively quick. So it took maybe like 3 or 4 weeks to get into the practice of it. But if I had stopped coaching at that point, it would have just crept back into the old ways. So for it really to have cemented into a new way of life and a new habit, it took about 6 months. And, sometimes I still catch myself thinking, oh, I'll just take an extra little chip, or something's really tasty and I'm like, I'm full, but I'm really enjoying it. And I'm like, actually, I don't really need that. It's not worth it. So you just leave it. So sometimes you still have to catch yourself, but realistically, 6 months for it to become ingrained.
Love that's great advice. I always use a parallel example for mental health, and the analogy or metaphor uses like sweeping the floor, that you can sweep the floor today and it'll be clean, but if you don't stay on top of it, it'll get dirty again. Your mental health is similar, but also your food relationship is similar. You'll find old versions of you sneaking back up again. Like I used to be able to keep chocolate in the house, like literally couldn't keep it in the house. If it was in the house, it got eaten. And that, when I look back and go, wow, that's mad, that's the old version. But there's still times over, particularly over Christmas or over a period where there's a lot of sweets in the house, you're conditioned an old version of you to potentially eat till you feel sick, which sounds insane, but most people listening will connect with that. And then you have to just catch yourself and go, well, actually, 5 or 6 of these quality sweets are enough. I don't need to eat the whole box or I will be sick. And this goes all the way for the biscuits in the house, sweets you keep, especially if you've got kids at home. Because, and again, I actually want to ask this because this is useful for the majority of people listening who have kids specifically. One of the objections, and I know you've had this as well, is I can't not buy the sweet stuff. I have kids in the house. I have to buy it for them. When people are struggling with that, normally the feedback for me is one, yes, but meaning that there's different food choices you could potentially buy that you might not, they're not what I call diet danger foods. They're, not Reese's Pieces that if you have one, you're going to eat the whole box. They're ones that you can eat a bit and go, actually, I'm fine with that. And then it's a case of potentially seeing, will the kids eat that? Because in a lot of cases, younger kids, boys, girls, etc., like sweets, like chocolate, but they're not super picky about which ones they are. They'll have their preferences, and that tends to be a lot more cemented as they get older into teenage years. But as kids, it's like sweets are sweets for the most part. Most parents will admit that that's something similar. But then there's others where the red flag is, okay, you can't keep it in your house. That's an underlying food relationship issue. With food in particular for you, was the misalignment with the relationship purely an overeating thing, or did you have more work that you had to do to heal that so that now you've got this balanced approach and you're able to, and I already know the answer to this, but you're able to serve people firsthand because they're struggling with it as well. What did that process look like for you in terms of healing is the right word, but again, it's been overused. Healing that food relationship, or just getting a better relationship with food in general.
The process was obviously that realization that, food fuels your body, it's nutritious, you need it, but stopping the deprivation. So stopping, you're saying you can't have chocolate in the house, like, not buying it would lead me to binge. So I need to have it in the house and know that it's there and it can remain untouched. But I live with someone who's the polar opposite. So my husband, if there's chocolate in the house or biscuits and it's open, he'll just eat and eat and eat and eat them. And then I'm like, I'll have my 2 biscuits a day. And I know that they're there waiting for me. And I know that I'm going to have these two and I'm going to enjoy them. And then I go in and he's eating them. And then there's no biscuits. And then I'm in crazy town because I'm binging because there's no chocolate that I expected. But in our house, I try to be a role model for the kids. So we've got like a saying in the house just now that sweets are treats, not snacks. If the kids come to me and they ask for a snack, my default answer is, well, there's blueberries, there's apples. And I know by the look that they're looking for a chocolate bar. And I'm like, well, sweets are treats. So now they're in the habit, especially now when there's a lot of, selection box chocolates lying around, they're now in the habit of coming to say, can I have a treat? And those are limited to one a day. So they know to spend that wisely, because just because we've got a whole bag full of chocolates left over from Christmas doesn't mean to say you're going to binge on it and eat 3 chocolate bars a day because, in the middle of the summer, are you eating 3 chocolate bars in a day? No. So they're also learning that there's not restriction, but, sensible choices that you can make in terms of the foods that you're eating. And they will come and they'll ask for a snack and they'll have a banana or they'll have a piece of fruit or melon or whatever. When they want that chocolate bar, they'll come and they'll ask for the treat, but they know it's one a day. So do you want it, what time of the day you having it? Because you don't have it now and then have another one after dinner. Pick it wisely. So they're also learning that, which I think is a positive way to teach them.
I love that. I'm actually going to steal that for my daughter Holly. Sweets or treats, not snacks.
Don't
That's
steal that
such
with
a
pride.
that's a great line, and it's so true because what's so interesting about it, what sometimes people fail to make the connection is how children can mirror back our own habits and behaviors, and sometimes it's a case of if you have this boundary in place around sweet food for your kids, it's like, okay, what's my boundaries for myself around sweet food, which is again a very interesting parallel for people to potentially draw. I want to ask, and I wasn't going to go down this road, but I think it's actually really valuable. You mentioned there how you model for your kids, a role model for your kids. Something that can be quite a heavy disconnect for people is individuals, and I know busy mums who are probably, it's probably one of the most underrated jobs in terms of, because you've a lot of busy mums who aren't just mums. Some are stay-at-home mums, but others are working jobs. They've got husbands. They're doing loads of different things, and it's just a million moving pieces. And it's so easy to put a lot of pressure on themselves for, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this. And then food can become an outlet for, okay, this is me time. I'm going to have this food. I'm going to watch this thing on TV for 20 minutes, 30 minutes. This is my me time. When it comes to modeling for your children in terms of a role model, you'll see sometimes this disconnect between, well, these are the rules and boundaries for my kids, but I don't have them for myself. And again, what's very interesting, I can't remember who I had this conversation with recently, but it was on the podcast about, I think it was with Dr. Marisa, where she was speaking about, I will never have my children say I need to count calories. She was like, because as soon as my behavior is I'm counting calories, children are watching what you're doing versus what you're saying. With the role modeling for, I live this way, because you bring your boys with you to training and there's videos on Instagram stories where they're doing workouts with you and you're literally living embodiment of being a role model. Was there a point in which that shifted? And I don't mean role model in the sense of how you are as a person and, being kind, being nice, etc. I'm talking very much fitness identity. When you started to bring your boys in with you for workouts, when you started to change this relationship with food for them, did you use the role model as a anchor point and a tool for your staying on track, or were those things completely independent?
I would probably say they were independent because that new identity as such that I've, become and embodied and now making a career from, it just is natural to me. It's ingrained in who I am and the decisions that I make. So I don't need to think about, if I do this, what are the impacts on my kids or my family? It's almost like a retrospective thing. Like I'll go and I'll do them, and retrospectively I'm like, oh, look how that worked out for the kids. And a prime example is, so my oldest is 14 and my youngest is 9. My youngest is obviously been closer to this fitness journey than what my eldest child has, and he has a much better relationship with fitness and nutrition and health than the oldest one does. And I mean, he's in the teenage years, so there could be something in that sort of space as well. But even if you look at when he was like a similar age, he wasn't so much into the gym. He wasn't interested. He didn't want to come on walks. He didn't want to go outside and, be in the fresh air, and would quite happily binge on, cakes and treats and things. And then now that I embody this healthier lifestyle, more positive choices, and my youngest has grown up seeing that just as a natural way of life, he is more into that than the eldest. So I think because he sees that every day in, day out, and it's not a conversation of, you need to have a banana because it's nutritious and chocolate's rubbish and crap for you. It's all about balance. And because I'm not forcing it down their throats to say, this is why, this is why, this is why, it's just a natural way of life rather than me dictating to them that I'm a fitness coach, so you need to be healthy kids or whatever. And I would never do that. Like, I would always want them to make their own choices and things like that. But I've done a few posts on my Instagram about the retrospective thing. I've done one with my dog quite recently where I hadn't even realised that at the time that the fitter I got, and I looked at this picture and it literally popped up on my memories, and I seen this picture of my dog and he was so overweight. And I was like, oh my God, he does not even look like, he looked like a seal. And it wasn't until I realised, like, what has changed for this dog? Because obviously he's not in charge of his nutrition or how many walks a day he goes. And then I had looked at the recent picture I had took, and I was like, that's a consequence in my life choices that's done that to this poor dog. And then obviously reversed it because he's come out the other side. Yeah, I think that's just a great full circle example of it has become ingrained in who I am. So I don't need to think about it now.
I love that. It's such a beautiful. The line that's coming to mind is, when you let your light shine, you allow everyone else's light to shine brighter, because you end up having this indirect impact on all the people or pets and people that are around you by living a specific way. And again, I think that's just a perfect embodiment of that, in terms of the retrospective looking back and going, wow, look at how it's impacted my husband, my kids, my dog, my family. I know one of your best friends that you've coached with, you've a crazy before and after with, in terms of his progress. And a lot of that is down to obviously the accountability for you as a coach, your knowledge as a coach, but also just your vibration and what you're doing and how that impacts the other people around you. And I think when those are struggling for an underlying why, which we've talked about in terms of like, why are you doing this? Why are you, in the case of business, we've done it with the framework from the book in terms of the new book coming out later this year, in terms of the why are you serving the market you're serving? Why are you helping people? And drawing that emotional connection to tap back into. But when those are looking to lose weight or get fitter or healthier for their family, tapping into that and knowing, well, this is actually the positive domino effect you can have on all the other people in your life. Because sometimes the why needs to be deeper than us. It's not about Lisa, it's not about Brian, it's not about us necessarily. Some can do it that way, but others need to look into children, their husband, their wife, their significant other, their family, their friends, and how that can impact everyone around them. Because you mentioned your two boys there, and you're very good with this, and again, I know this more than anybody because of the transition from the end of 2025 with the business into 2026 and beyond. Time is something people tend to struggle with, or something that they tend to misframe in terms of not making things a priority. How do you balance out? Let me rephrase. What's the recommendation you use with clients that you also use yourself for time management? And when I say time management, whether that's batching meals, getting your workouts in, like, you have a lot of moving parts. You've got your husband, your two boys, like you mentioned, you've got the business, you have, and again, there was the job at the back end of 2025. Again, some time is freeing up with that coming into 2026 and beyond, and even more off the back of this podcast, because you know this, I've said Tana, one of my favorite one-to-one clients, she's just the best, but I've removed myself from that space now to focus on the mentorship, the circle. So I have people coming in, I've sent them over to you because I know they're going to be looked after, and that's just going to continually grow throughout 2026. But for those who are struggling with time, what is some of the advice you give them, or mental gymnastics in terms of reframing the narrative of the story that I don't have time?
Talking about being a role model for my kids, like, I try to be a role model for my clients as well. So I literally coach them through my life experiences. So the advice that I'm giving them is stuff that I've tried and has worked for me and has stuck. So that time management piece, I used to be terrible. Like, I used to be here, there, and everywhere. Never coordinated with my husband. You know, it was two ships passing opposite directions, kids everywhere. We've now got two dogs, two cats. Like, life is chaotic. The start of the year, it's January. I sat down with my calendar and I was putting in all the events. And Jesus, January is like stacked already. And normally, years gone by, I would have an absolute meltdown thinking, how am I going to manage all this? But I literally sit with my calendar. So I've got my business calendar for like my PT stuff and the fitness side. I've got my personal calendar, which is, you know, just my general life where I can fit it in. And then my work calendar from when I had my office job. And I would sit and sync them up on a weekly basis. And I couldn't do it and I wouldn't recommend doing it more than a week in advance because, you know, you don't know what's coming around the corner, like last minute plans and all that sort of stuff. But a week in advance, sit on a Saturday or a Sunday with all these calendars and sync them up, have a look, what have I got coming up for the next week? Because you might have the best intentions in the world to say, I'm going to go to the gym 4 times a week and I'm going to eat this for dinner and it's going to take me an hour to prepare this recipe. And then you look at your calendar and you think, oh Jesus, like how am I actually going to fit this in? And that's where people think, I'm not even gonna bother trying because how am I gonna manage it? So literally I sit like myself, and this is what I tell my clients and teach my clients, sit with your diary, look through your week. When are you going food shopping? How many days are you shopping for? Because if you're shopping for a week, don't just plan 2 or 3 meals, like plan for a week. You know, when are you going to do that? Because the food shop itself is a task. And then sync up. When do you need quick meals? Like for me, my two boys play football 3 times a week. There's swimming, there's, you know, PTing in the evenings and things like that. So we need quite a lot of quick turnarounds for meals. So there's no point planning in a meal that's going to take, you know, 45 minutes to cook and then, you know, you're chucking it down your throat because you're having to get out the door to football. So I plan and I use, you know, in my arsenal, I've got like really quick meals, go-to meals that we know this is going to be really quick, a quick win for everybody. And then I plan those longer kind of recipes for days that we don't have as chaotic a schedule. And I literally set my calendar is like this color coded. I think it's beautiful. Other people look at it with absolute fear, but I'm quite a methodical, process driven person. So I look at my color coded calendar. I know what all the colors mean. I know what I'm doing. Give other people night sweats, but it works for me. And then I know I've got it synced up, my nutrition, what I'm having, and then I've got it synced up when am I having my workouts. And this is where it becomes non-negotiable. If it goes in that diary where it's colour code, it's happening. So I literally will schedule in, like when I worked in the office job, I'd have a block in my calendar of like blocked out time, lunch, and I go for a walk during my lunch. Rain or shine. And, you know, somebody tries to put in a meeting over that time. Oh, sorry, declined, it's moved. This is my lunch break. It is like literally protected time that is mine. I need that mental space to, you know, decompress a little bit, get out, get some fresh air, move, and literally just protect it with my life. It's in my diary, so it's happening. And I do the same for my workouts. Like I've got my gym schedule in my diary and I'll stick to it. And that is just how I function. How, you know, if it's not in my diary, it's not happening. It's forgotten.
I love that. It reminds me of if it gets measured, it gets managed. And that's such a merging that with protected time. And it's such a difficult, it's an easy concept to grasp, but very difficult to apply, meaning that you block time out. This is my hour that I'm going for a walk at lunchtime. It's so easy to let other people's agendas and other things take that time. But I always tell, and I think busy mums, and I will never be a busy mum. I can claim to be a busy dad, but I will never be a busy mum. So again, there's different self-imposed and cultural and societal pressures that come on top of that I'm mindful of. But you can't give from an empty cup, and you have to fill yours up first, and then by proxy you end up having more energy, more time for all the other important things, whether it's your family, your boys, your husband, your partner, your business, your own personal health, etc. And again, it's about that fine balance. And I think for those that are kind of particularly similar type A's, where we put things into a calendar and we can execute on it, but if it doesn't get into the calendar, it doesn't get done. That's a really good, and I hate using the word life hack because it's been so ruined for the last decade on social media, but it effectively is a life hack in terms of coordinating and productivity. Out of curiosity, just for those, because there's definitely going to be some curious about this, those go-to meals, the fast ones, Any one or two personal preference that are like, right, I'm short on time, I can plug this in, it does for me, it works for the boys, etc. Anything come to mind with those particular go-to meals?
Some people might come for me and be like, this you shouldn't be promoting, processed foods or whatever. But one of our go-tos, because I always try and eat at the same time as the boys, I like to eat as a family. We didn't have a kitchen table growing up. We didn't have family meals. So it's something that is really important to me to spend in our busy, chaotic lives. Just that 5, 10 minutes together around the table, eating a meal, sharing a meal together. And one of the quick go-tos that I love is like one of my guilty pleasures is fish fingers on like a taco, like a soft tortilla taco with these just big chunky fish fingers in there, plenty salad, and then we used to, and this is another progression in terms of how far we've come. Used to be like frozen chips or whatever. Now we make homemade wedgies or homemade chips and things like that, so they're a little bit healthier as well. But it's one of my go-tos. Absolutely love it. Like, and then the kids now request it, and they're like, "Can we have like a fish finger wrap?" I'm like, "Yes." It's actually on the menu this week. We're having it on Thursday.
It reminds me as well, because something that without context people can push back on, and I think we can both get labeled into this bracket as fitness professionals, health professionals, etc. Because every time I put up a chocolate bar on stories, people are like, "Oh my god, I didn't realize you ate chocolate." Those that don't listen to the podcast don't realize it from social media alone, but those that listen to the podcast know this. And instead of an 80-20 all the time going, right, 80% nutritious meals, 20% not, your actual individualized meals can be like that. I.e., yes, you've got the processed fish fingers, but there's going to be a bit of protein in there, but you've got the salad, you've got the tortilla wrap, etc. with it. So the meal itself can be 80-20 in principle. So sometimes perfection can really be the thing that holds people back, as opposed to, well, what's manageable, what actually works for the setup of life. And yeah, would it be ideal to have a chicken breast in there instead of fish fingers? Possibly, in terms of nutrient value, but your kids, you love it more, it's faster to prepare, it works, and then you've got the salad, the wrap. So sometimes it's taking that pressure off, getting everything perfect, and knowing that that doesn't happen. Even fitness and health professionals, myself included, it's never 100% right all of the time with food, ever. Like, it depends on capacity, depends on time. Like, sometimes you've got busy weeks. Sometimes if this with the boys being sick, if Holly is sick, everything really goes out the window in terms of like trying to get life sorted, because that capacity is just shrank because they're off school, you're looking after them, etc. So that's such an important thing to know when to duck and weave. And it's why I love, Lisa, that you talked about doing it week ahead, because you can't predict 2 months from now, to even 2 weeks from now in a lot of cases. So it's breaking it down into manageable parts. With the food, with the training, mindset's obviously a huge focus of what you do. I want to ask about helping busy mums, because it's a big focus. Now, Tana, who I sent to you, isn't a busy mum. She's a high level type A high achiever. So this isn't necessarily just the space you serve. You're a very educated coach, a great coach, very empathetic, but you're also quite type A in terms of the accountability structure, which is the reason I sent Tana to you, because she's very, give me the goals and we'll go and hit them together, as opposed to a little bit more airy fairy as a coach, which there's nothing wrong with. Some people will connect with that. That's not me as a coach. That's not you as a coach. Other people, and there's a good chance if you're in that bracket where you're very type B, go with the flow, you're probably not even listening to my podcast realistically. So again, it's probably eliminated by just availability bias alone. But based on those mums that are struggling, if we use them as an example, what's the most common issue or pain point or trend that you see? Obviously, they're looking to lose weight normally, because that's what you specialize in terms of the body composition. But is it nearly always the food side of things? Is it nearly always the training? Is it the lifestyle, stress management, and then having a positive amplification on other areas when you get the stress? What are you seeing most often if you pull a culmination of the PT, the online, even the classes, all the people you've worked with over the last several months? What's the common issue that you see holding most of them back?
Yeah, I would probably say it was two, if I'm allowed to. One of them is the most common complaint is I don't have time. I don't have time
Mm.
to work out. I don't have time to do this. I'm like, I'm sure there's time in there. Like, let's find it. So we'll go through with a fine tooth comb their routine, their schedule, and that's when I say to my clients, like, it's tailored. This is what I mean. Like, I will go through your life and your schedule. Show me your calendar. Let's color code it while we're there. But the second thing is around, like, the food and the nutrition as well. So a common objection that I get with clients is they like, they've been through years and years and years of building up these habits of having takeaways and convenience foods, and they like what they like. They don't like salad, they don't like healthier food choices, so it's breaking down that you can still have those kind of things in moderation. I'm not restricting it, I'm not taking away. I'm not saying to you never go to McDonald's. Like Jesus, I'm in McDonald's like a few times a month because that's what my schedule allows. But it's everything in moderation. So let's just find how we can slowly introduce things, and it's not an all or nothing. Like it's not day one, take everything away. You're just eating healthy, green, colourful plates. You can have takeaways, you can have your favourite foods, you can have chocolate, you can have ice cream, you can have wine and beers if you want to, but let's just break it down like day by day and take it step by step, and then we'll find the time and we'll prioritise what we need to prioritise in terms of like your goals, because everybody's goals are different. So I'll literally sit with the clients and be like, right, what do you want to achieve? And then top priority, and then we make that like their non-negotiable, right? Okay, so whether it's steps or whether it's getting, their workout schedule in. And I think one of my proudest clients is, you've mentioned him already, my best friend, his transformations on my Instagram. His face isn't, he wants to remain anonymous, but his transformations there if people wanted to have a look at it. And this guy, known him for years, really, really good, close friends, and he came to me for help and went through my transformation or my Ignite program and didn't step foot in a gym, didn't have any equipment. It was literally all body weight. Loved having, his takeaways, his beers. You don't have to give any of that up. And he ended up losing like almost 2 stone over the period of working with me. And the beautiful thing about it, which honestly could make me cry, like I was so happy that, you get to change people's lives in such a way, was the relationship that he then started to have like with his kids. So like he went from doing his workouts in his lunch break to scheduling them at the weekends because his daughter was like, "What are you doing?" And she started to join in. So he would literally then postpone his lunch workout so that she could do it with him. And then they then found like a common thing. And it was just like a beautiful, like, for me to have made that impact in somebody's life was just like incredible. And that's why I do what I do. But like I say, there's always time. We can always find time and make it work. And it's not going to be the same off the shelf product for everybody. It's what works for you in your life and your chaotic schedule, just to kind of, yeah, make it fit.
I love that. And I've said this to you, I've said this to other mentees and people I've worked with in business. We have the best job in the world when it's in alignment, when we have the right people coming to us as clients, people we can serve, and square pegs into square holes. It really is the best job ever because of that positive compound effect in other areas of their life. Like what you said, you've given your example, you've given his example, and something that I think gets so underrated within fitness is, and this is again part of the catch-22 of social media, you see the ab selfie wankers, past version of myself included, and the bikini girls and all the people that are in incredible shape. And sometimes the message of, well, actually getting fitter and healthier has this huge positive impact on the people closest to you. And sometimes, and again, I think long-term listeners will know this, but just in case there's some that aren't, not everything that glitters is gold on social media anyway. And you're looking to, without being too cliche, run your own race. How does changing my body confidence, my health, my fitness impact the people and the things that are closest to me? It's not about getting the shredded six-pack for Instagram. It's not about getting the shredded abs for a bikini photo. If that's what you want to do, by all means, you can do that too. There's nothing wrong with those goals. But for a lot of individuals, particularly busy dads, busy mums, the goalpost is different. It's not, you're not in your 20s earning a job that's working a job that's low stress, no kids, no financial commitments in terms of a mortgage, etc. Right now, you have a higher capacity to get shredded and go to Ibiza in the summer. If you have a couple of kids at home or children at home, or just a busier life, even if you don't have children, your goalpost needs to be adjusted to your subjective life right now. And I think that's a really important message. I want to double back on the like what they like when it comes to food, because I've met that objection with people over the years. If somebody says to you, I like what I like, what's your first step towards doing the mental gymnastics to flip that? Is it the educational side where you talk about, look, you can have these foods, it's just within moderation? Is it we come at it from a movement first perspective, i.e. we're going to work on step counts, gym, and then we'll adjust to nutrition as motivation builds and momentum builds. Or, and again, I know this from the one-to-one online you do with people, you course correct accordingly depending on what works best for them. But in terms of a general recommendation for those listening, what do you tend to find works best for the majority of people?
Yeah, so I don't try to change their world from day one. We'll pick a focus, so whether that's the nutrition side or the movement side, we'll pick one focus, and then it almost lays the first step in the foundations. But I would ask them to kind of choose, right, okay, if you want to continue to eat, takeaways every night and all this, calorific food, what are your expectations of your goals? Like, this is how you've lived up until this point. You've came to me looking for help. What do you think I can change if you don't change something? You can't out exercise a bad diet. You can go to the gym all you want. You can, bust your ass on a treadmill for an hour, sweating, doing all these steps, and it'll make a small difference. But nutrition is such a massive part of weight loss and changing your body composition that it can't be done without it. So the two come hand in hand. And what I find is if people kind of set off doing the exercise route, they start to, do those steps, they start to get into it a little bit, they think they're making a little bit of progress, then it's easier to transition into that. Okay, like, okay, let's now look at the nutrition. Let's now nail it down. I'm not saying we're taking everything away, but let's just, condense it to the weekend and let's concentrate on one healthy lunch that you can have 2 or 3 days. So we'll take it in baby steps so it's not so scary and overwhelming for people.
I love that. Again, I would do Kilimanjaro in 2024 November. I brought a group of my followers up, and I remember and I'd heard this quote before, but it landed differently when it came from, he wasn't Tanzanian, he was Kenyan, where he's like, how do you eat an elephant? You eat it bite by bite. Like, every goal can be broken down into its smallest component parts, and he was using it in the context of the summit for Kilimanjaro. He was like, step by step, eat the elephant bite by bite. And that's the same with food. It's a bit more like on the money in terms of metaphor, but it's bite by bite, it's meal by meal, it's breaking it down to its smallest component parts. Even if you have 2 stone to lose, 50 pounds to lose, 100 pounds to lose, or whatever the goal is, it's breaking it down into the small digestible parts that you can achieve, but also what's within your control. We spoke about this a lot when it comes to the business side of things. What's in your control? Posting on social, replying to people, getting in the right clients, getting great results for those clients, things that are in our control, the algorithm, the economy, things that are outside of our control. We have to be mindful that those things matter, but we can't control them. It's exactly the same with food and nutrition and with training. You can control your schedule to a degree, not all of it, but to a degree. You can control your nutrition, not all of it, again, when you're busy, but to a large degree. Same with training. So it's asking, and what is the controllable, or controlling the controllables that will impact you in a positive way. And again, chunking it down. Again, I know you've been doing this as a coach with people. So again, it's why they're getting such good results, because that accountability element is absolutely massive. And what's interesting is you can hear part of my voice, part of Kelly's voice, because we had like an identical conversation on the podcast where we'd say, look, change one thing and then build on that, change another thing, build on that. So success leaves clues for people that are struggling with it. At least the final question that I want to ask before I do, where I'm going to link everything in the description below. You've got the social media channels. Instagram is going to be a focus for the next few months. You've got the podcast, which goes your thoughts and very useful tools for people, particularly solo-based episodes, but now guests coming into it as well. So I'll link that in the description. Podcast people love podcasts, so they can check that out. But for those that have listened and go, well, actually, I'm that person. I need help with my weight. I need help with my body composition. I need help with my food relationship. And I need somebody that is going to figuratively hold my hand along the way and not make all these changes because they want a 6-week crazy before and after where they load me with fat burners, take the photo, and then say good luck. Not calling anyone out in particular, but Dubai wankers, you know who I'm speaking to. So, but there's a lot of great coaches out there. You're one of them who takes this holistic approach and makes sure that it's done in a sustainable way. And again, that exceptional before and after photo shoot model isn't necessarily a bad thing as long as it's an exit strategy. My issue is when people are like, right, good luck after 6 weeks, and then they've completely either short term done metabolic damage to themselves or completely ruined their relationship with their body or their food. That's what I have a serious issue with as someone that's in the health and fitness industry. And I know those that are coming to you potentially off the back of that, or those who are going to avoid that coming to you, will be looked after and guided all the way through. For those that want to message about either the Ignite program to get kickstarted, or the one-to-one where they have that high level of accountability built in, like Tana that we mentioned, where's the best place for them to reach out to you before we get on to the final question?
Yeah, just on Instagram or Facebook, whatever their platform is the best way. I am quite proactive in messaging back day or night.
You are brilliant at that, to be fair. I'll link those in the description below for people as well. If you're listening to this podcast when it comes out, or anytime in the back end to the long tail end of the podcast, again, everything will be linked in the description below and on brankeyfitness.com. Lisa, last question I want to ask. If you were, and this is might be a misaligned question, but it ties in perfectly to what we mentioned at the start of the podcast. Something that I regularly speak about on this podcast, whether it's business, whether it's fitness, whether it's mindset, whether it's relationship, trying to get things to your new normal, i.e. like what you talked about with food, where now it's kind of automatic. I talked about in the first book, The Fitness Mindset, making the right automatic food choice. That's your new normal. It's just the way that you live now after a certain period of time. But I find still, even when things are your new normal, you can have a low energy day, you didn't sleep well, maybe you had a fight with your other half, or a fight with someone at work, or just a bad day. We all get them. We're a bit run down, a bit sick, and just everything feels a little bit more difficult. And it's those days that are the most important, because they're character building days. They're days that you're trying to sink back into an old version, and your new version is like, no, 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 no. Just because you're tired, just because you're sick, just because you're run down, this isn't the way we live anymore. Firstly, I'll ask, if those days happen to you, because I could be a focus group of one here, but I don't think I am. And if they do, what's your narrative to pull yourself out of it so that you don't slip back in even for a day? Or if you do, one day doesn't become into two. Again, tell me what you do every day, I'll tell you where you'll be in a year. What's your internal dialogue for not slipping back into 2018, 2019, or before that on those days when energy is low? Because this is an honest conversation that sometimes people can pedestal the me's, the you's of the world who have achieved these things, and assume that you're out of escape velocity and you don't feel these issues anymore. And for some, yes, you develop tools so that you don't slip back as fast as you once did, but there's still a risk on those low energy days. So I don't want to paint a false narrative or picture for people. When that happens to you, what's your internal dialogue or internal self-talk to not let that slip? Or if it does slip, that one day doesn't turn into two, into three, and so on.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking to me at the right time, because you know that I've went through so many sick days in the last little while, and it's so hard. But I think mentality and positive mindset is like a massive thing. And I would urge anybody listening to try it for themselves the next time, even the next time you're waking up hungover, or like the cold or whatever. There's two types of people. There's the first type of person is going to wake up and think, oh my God, I'm dying, I feel so crap. And that then leads to, I don't have the energy to go to the gym. I'm just going to have like a nice little snack and comfort food, and I'm going to sit on the couch because I'm so ill. And then there's the other type of person who wakes up and they think, oh God, like I don't feel like 100% today. Okay, it's not that bad. Like I've got a sore head. I'm okay. I can move. Maybe I could still have a nice nutritious breakfast. I can have my usual breakfast. Maybe I won't go to the gym and, crush a PB. Maybe I'll just go for a walk, extend the walk, get a bit of fresh air. So determining what type of person you are. So if you're a person A who's already in the mindset of, oh, this is terrible, that's the person who's going to relapse. You need to get into that shift of it's not so bad. So it's that mentality of flipping how you see the world and how you see yourself. But it's like a checklist, right? Okay, I've woke up, I'm not feeling great. What could I still achieve? Is it nutrition? Is it movement? Is it something? Just, my goal is not to vegetate on that sofa, so I need to do something. Whether it's just walking on the treadmill or going up and down the stairs like a couple of times. But the caveat to that is, health is key. Like the reason that, so many people are into health and fitness is for longevity of life. Like it's a better quality of life, a longer life with your family. So don't kill yourself to, if you're on death's door, don't be dragging yourself around the street, army crawling like I need to get these steps in or whatever. It's just going to do 10 times more damage. Stick within your limits and allow your body to recuperate for that day. And that was one of the hardest lessons I needed to kind of learn. Like, yeah, yes, I am a role model. Yes, I need to be doing these kind of things, but I don't want to role model the wrong behaviour. So I'm absolutely not saying to someone if they're on death's door to be getting up and, just lift a 1 kg dumbbell instead of your usual weight because it's still something. Listen to your body, listen to yourself. And as you go through this journey, becoming more self-aware with your nutrition and your health and your fitness, you get to know your body inside out. You know where your capabilities are. So your 100% today might be different to your 100% tomorrow. And that's absolutely fine. Like, you're still showing up, you're still doing something. Just keep it within your capabilities of your health. Because if you push yourself too hard in those circumstances, you'll end up taking longer to recover. So, you know, 1 or 2 days sick is absolutely fine. But
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's funny that you mentioned that because that's where I think your coaching comes in so usefully, because especially with fitness, and it's ironic because we had this conversation in December when you were dying and you're like, look, I haven't hit the targets for the minute. I was like, you were dying. Rest, Lisa. I was like, we'll hit these when you come back, right, when you're feeling good. And then 2 weeks later, you're like, actually, I don't feel 100%, but I'm fine. I'm like, okay, well, actually, you're good today. Let's do the videos, do the targets, etc., etc. And it's really useful in that sense. But where it goes to another level is in the health side and the fitness side, because sometimes we're not the best at listening to our own bodies, and we need a coach to be like, actually, you just have a couple of sniffles today. Go do your workout or go for your walk, you're fine. Or if they're dying and you've got a type A like me who is on death's door but still wants to go for a run or train, you need someone to be like, look, you are going to make yourself 10 times worse. Just relax, chill out for a few days, get your immune system back, and then everything else will take its place from there. And again, that's where I feel it's funny. I had a wrap on this. A guy messaged on a public message on comment where I was talking about PTs. It was one of my videos on Instagram Reels about different types of clients for PTs. And the comment was, if someone is so motivated, they're not going to need a personal trainer. And I wrote back and I said, I completely disagree. I said, I would consider myself quite a motivated individual, particularly for training. I still have coaches when I'm training for races or when I need to improve or when I want to stay on top of something. So I have a complete disconnection from that comment. He actually never replied, because I was like, it's not the case. You have those that need the accountability from 0 to 1, all the way up to those that want that little bit of a performance edge. Your Tanas of the world, who will do great by themselves, will do way better with the yous of the world, with the me's of the world, with other coaches who will help them go to the next level. So again, I'm a big believer, coaches need coaches, people need support and accountability, especially if you're not in that ecosystem where your family members and friends are in the professional capacity to be able to help you. But also sometimes when they are, you get what you pay for. It's normally free with family members and friends in a lot of cases, so you're not getting that accountability built in. So for those that are listening who feel that call and go, actually, I need to make the change, and I know I would love to do it by myself, but realistically right now I can't, nor should I, because I have other things that are a higher priority. That's where your coaching comes in. So again, call to action for people at the end of the podcast. Lisa, I'm going to link out the social media, Lisa Maddock, Bodify Fitness for Instagram. I'm going to link out the podcast below, the website, everything we spoke about in today's podcast, that people can reach out. But thanks so much for coming on and sharing your story. Absolutely delighted that we got to do this.
yeah, thanks so much for having me.
There's a saying in business that your vibe attracts your tribe, and I think it's so true. Lisa, who I've been working with for the last several months in the business mentorship, has just been a pleasure. Every single month when we go on our 2-hour deep dive call and our check-ins every week, she's such a pleasure to speak to, and a wonderful human being and a great coach. So the links for everything that she and us and we talked about, and us, I don't think that English is in the description below. Today's podcast was sponsored by that business mentorship program. At the time of recording, it is currently full, but there is a waiting list if you want to apply for it and see if it is a fit. That's everything from me from today's podcast. Thanks so much for listening. Catch you next week.